you see what you people have made me do? I have to go back to basics. And why? Because the Discord server requested it. I know it's been a while. But I needed time to recover. Months and months of therapy wasted for your entertainment. And here we are again. Are we really doing this? Is this something I genuinely want to do? I don't even know. But it's happening. 5 of the worst trains ever. Part 26. Lord save me. The British Rail Mark 5A. Really? Right off the bat, I feel like I just got punched in the face. Like, you couldn't even wait. Not even 1 second. Like, you had to get right up in here. And the worst part is, this has nothing to do with you. Get out of here! Because this is a modern train set that only entered service back in 2019. So it has nothing to do with the historical nationalized British Rail. It's just classified under tops. And if Mark 5A sounds weird to you, it is. But it refers to the whole train set, not the actual locomotives involved here, which are actually Class 68s. Diesel electrics. And on their own, the 68s are okay. Like, they're fine. But when they were attached to the Mark 5A train sets, things didn't go super great at all. And it wasn't really their fault exactly. It was actually the coaches in the train sets, not the locomotives. So remember, they entered service in 2019. And by 2022, only 4 sets were in use daily. They were really underutilized. Despite this, in 2023, faults were discovered in the coaches, which included cracking. The standard carriages, as well as the 14 driving trailers, had been built by Spanish manufacturer CAF, and apparently there were some problems. Just a few problems that were never resolved, and it was decided really not to resolve them at all. Plans were announced to withdraw the fleet after December 2023, but the problem is the sets are under lease until May of 2024, so they can't actually get rid of them until that time. They're just kind of sitting there burning money. As it stands, they remain in storage, not being used because, you know, they could kill somebody. It's great. And it's unfortunate because it kind of reflects badly on the Class 68s, which, like I said, on their own have been fine. In this weird instance, it really wasn't the locomotive at all. It was the train they were attached to. The Hornsby-Akroyd jackshaft locomotive. What the... I don't even know what that is? I have many questions, and so do you, and that's alright. This is an internal combustion engine, which, as the name implies, uses, well, internal combustion to move rather than something like steam, for example. And it was designed to run on the 2-foot 6-inch gauge Chittenden and Upnor Railway. This interesting little creation consists of 2 separate 060 coupled bogies. Details as to its operation are very limited, I must admit. In terms of the specifics, it's a lot of speculation, but it is implied that there'd be a gearing system in this thing, and that the single-cylinder horizontal 20 horsepower compression ignition, which makes it a semi-diesel engine, had 2 opposed pistons with a 2-speed transmission. It's interesting, but it didn't work very well. This was back in 1903, and this kind of technology was still in its infancy. The locomotive was woefully underpowered, and the transmission was inefficient. It was also apparently very noisy in an era with steam locomotives, so how do you manage to be noisier than that? And it was difficult to even get started in the first place, which is supposed to be one of the benefits of using internal combustion? Like, I thought that was one of the advantages over steam, but in this case, no, this was a nightmare to get going. It's unknown what happened to it, but it was almost certainly scrapped at some point. 1. Are we sure this isn't a mad science list? Because I'm starting to get that impression all of a sudden. This is a French locomotive, actually, and an electric one, constructed as a prototype and completed in 1897. This is a battery-powered locomotive, and we've talked about these in the past. This technology is not brand new. It has been done, and this is actually one of the oldest examples I've ever seen of it. The intent behind this creation seems to be that they wanted to experiment with high-speed electric traction, in parallel with the construction of the electrified meter gauge line. But, based on that explanation, they didn't actually have the line electrified yet, so how would they experiment with electric locomotive if they didn't have the electrified line? Well, duh, batteries. And the way it worked was bizarre. See, because this is a very old locomotive, and therefore old battery technology, it actually kinda had a tender. It was pretty much always coupled to a specialized van that specifically carried the majority of the batteries to operate the thing. In operation, it did have some benefits. It was able to reach 100 kilometers per hour, which was pretty impressive in those days, especially for this one-off odd experiment. But the speed element was pretty much all it was good for. For one thing, it only delivered 600 horsepower, and it was really, really unreliable. It failed constantly. That last bit seems to be its biggest issue. It simply broke all the time, so you can kinda see why they wouldn't have wanted to use it for any real length of time. It was written off and scrapped in 1905 without any additional work being done on the concept, but by that point they had actual electrified lines. There was no reason to use batteries when they had, lines in place. Something I think some people should remember, but it's just me. It's just me, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just read things. We have lithium ion, and that'll make everything better, I bet. The BB 60001. This is a diesel mechanical locomotive that is also French, built in 1959 and leased to the SNCF, the French public railway company, which has come up occasionally in the past. And yes, I said that. It's a diesel mechanical, which isn't unheard of, but it is unusual. This thing featured an asynchro transmission driving one of the two axles of each bogie via a drive bridge, and connecting rods actually connected the two drive axles of the same bogie. The connecting rod setup wasn't actually a problem. The transmission was. Because it's mechanical, it wasn't suitable for the demands of railroad operation. Trains were too heavy for it. And that meant it had a really hard time getting anything started. Once it was going, it was okay. It did decently, but the fact that it couldn't start any heavy trains and needed help was kind of a serious problem. She also broke all the time. I don't know what you expected. Didn't help that kind of mechanical transmission was unusual, non-standard, and relatively complex, so this single example was abandoned in favor of diesel-electric technology, which offered better results, and I say that with the exception of the BB 71000s, which are directly based off of this prototype. Yeah, they actually made a production run of them, and they remained in service from 1965 to 2005. Now you might be saying, well, that sounds great! They must have fixed it, right? No! No, I have no idea why they built these! They had literally all the same problems as the prototype. They were unreliable and couldn't start anything. Their continued issues caused SNCF to resell them over the years to various companies with smaller needs. Because with smaller trains, they were fine, but I don't understand why you made these in the first place. What was the point? You knew it wasn't gonna work, and no, it didn't work. 7 of them managed to get into preservation, too. So, these unique pieces are still around, which I guess is something. The NS 2800. Are you happy, my Dutch followers? You've been begging me to talk about a locomotive from your country for a while. It's a consistent issue that I run into all the time. And now, you're number 1 on this list. You're welcome.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
officially numbered 2801, part of the 2800 series, there was only one example of this locomotive built, and she was named Cruppel Mary. Yes, she had a name, Mary. What's Cruppel mean? Well, it's Dutch. It means crippled. Yeah. The 2800 class as a whole was envisioned to be sort of a standard diesel locomotive, even across national lines. And in 1962, Mary entered service with Nederlandse Spoorwegen. She immediately developed a notable reputation for being awful. She was diesel electric, which was a good idea, but she had a lot of defects. I mean, a lot of defects. What was wrong with her? Everything. Just everything was wrong with Mary. Nothing worked. Ever. She didn't even last a decade. Nederlandse Spoorwegen got fed up with her and pulled her from service in 1968. She was scrapped in 1970. Only lasting in service 6 years. She was that terrible. She was supposed to be pulling very heavy freight trains, but she spent most of her days in the shop, being fixed. And it didn't seem to matter what they did. Mary always broke somehow. Her only benefit was she had a high cabin with a pretty good view. Drivers liked her for that. And nothing else! And with that, a special thank you goes to all my underwater train finders, Some Dude 267, Orange Glass, Benjamin Owens, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, Brian, Jack Carson's Road Videos, Lord Off 444, A Person 723, Royal Huts 2060, Isaac for 1405, Giles Kwiatkowski, Matt Weaver, Tom Redline, NS Productions 8104, Wheeljack 8401, Rescues Greyhounds, The Baxter, Caleb Crosswhite, Andrew Bowen, Josh Johnson, Caleb Rainwaters, Prez Drenton, Master of None, Travis Zielinski, Jared Brussel, Joshua Long, Tommy Rossini, Ben McCullough, Panzer Kitsune 131-232, Mark Holding, G Wiz, Mr. Terrevel, Liam Wright, Hayden DeGrow, Metal for Life Guy, Hannah Bird, No, Eric Hutton, Williard Conklin, Kirk Forkham, Ohio Trucker 1, Mitchell Cole, Mr. Sleepy, Dr. Racer 78, Nylon, AET Museum, Railroad Preserver 2000, and of course, my dad. Till next time, this is Darkness, individual fun, farewell.